Tohono Autumn Nation. Welcome to another segment of our show. Today I'm very excited about this, I'm always excited about bringing you information about what's happening on the nation. But today I have a special guest, and I'm very appreciative to this individual who has been on the nation and has provided information, crucial information on this particular subject matter. And every year, as some of you know, personally, we have October 4th, and that's St. Francis Day. But also there is a pilgrimage that happens during that time as well to Magdalena, Mexico, or autumn call it Marina. So there's a number of autumn, I should say quite a bit of autumn, that have made the journey, made the pilgrimage to Marina. And so a lot has changed through the years as far as going across the border. There's a lot of history to, of course, this St. Francis Day. Back in the 1500s, and I was reading up on this and doing some research, and during the 1500s, 1600s, involved Father Kino, a number of other things that happened during that time. So 1700s, and to where the pilgrimage is taking place. And so, and why Magdalena, or Marina, I should say. So fast moving forward, you know, the autumn, traveling to Marina back then, through the years, you know, never really had any problems in going back and forth in the United States into Mexico. Of course, back then the Gaston Purchase hadn't taken place, but even then, during that time, the Gaston Purchase, which separated the autumn, our homelands, the United States, separating Mexico and the United States, drawing that line and separating the autumn. But the autumn still traveled somewhat freely during those times. But then, fast forward, 9/11 happened. So as we all know, which heightened security along the border. And so now the port of entry has always been there. That's kind of information I want to share with the autumn, is that this individual the special guest that I have today, has been on the nation. She is a manager. She is a liaison for the nation for under USCBP. She works at the port of entry. So she brings that information every year to council and shares that information. And most of the time, you just hear her voice on the radio. This particular segment, you're going to actually see her, but like I said, it's from the beginning, is that 9/11 has certainly changed a lot of things in regards to traveling across into the United States. Also coming back, certain identifications, certain processes has changed through the years, and a lot of technology has also been involved for making it easier to come across. And certainly I think those are some of the things that why I wanted this individual to come on our show and tell you about all those things, and hopefully, you know, kind of give you some fresh information, probably some information you already know, or some information you didn't know. I mean, this particular show is for those who are traveling to Marina during that time, and what you may be asked, the do's and don'ts. Or I know that sometimes we get frustrated because certain things happen at the border, and this primarily at the port of entry. So for those autumn who will be doing the pilgrimage, but not just autumn do the pilgrimage. We have our sister tribes, our sister members who do come out from Salt River, Hill River, Akchin. Those of you who are been following our show, hopefully you can share this with some of your friends that may be traveling to Marina, and this kind of information that is needed for you to make it more easier for you to be traveling across the border, particularly coming back to the United States. And I think this is the first time this has ever been done, aside from this individual coming to council. I'm very excited, very appreciative to this individual accepting our invitation, but also U.S. Custom and Border Protection. I'm sure she has her own bosses too, who she had to ask, but I want to thank her bosses as well for allowing her to come. So again, I certainly hope you enjoy this segment of our show. I certainly hope you get the necessary information you need, and I know she'll share a lot of information with you, and hopefully make it more understandable what the needs are coming back into the United States. So let's start our show. Let's hopefully you enjoy it. So like I said, get more information from this particular segment. Good afternoon, Nation. Welcome to another segment of Tohono Impressions. Today I'm very excited about this particular segment. Some information that I feel that is viable to the autumn, and it is a subject that has been around for decades. Mm-hmm. So, as you well know, some of the autumn who make the pilgrimage to Magdalena or Magdalena, Sonora, Mexico, every October 4th. There's a lot of history to this, going back to the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, and of the pilgrimage and the history of that. And as we move forward, times have changed in regards to 9/11. And certainly border security has become more prevalent. This is why I thought it'd be some good information for that we can share with you in regards to those that do the pilgrimage on October 4th. And it is a big event, not only for the nation, but also for Magdalena and those that are doing the pilgrimage. It is an individual journey for those that will be going in regards to renewal, sacrifice, and their devotion for St. Francis Day. And it is very recognized on the nation as well. But let me go ahead and introduce. I'm very thankful or appreciative to having this person here. She is an employee of Homeland Security, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, and I'm very excited for her to be here. So I'm gonna go ahead and introduce you to her, and her name is Bunny. I forget how you pronounce it.
Arellano. That's okay. Yeah.
So Arellano. Mm-hmm. So she is a supervisor for Border Security Program Manager, and but also she's a tribal liaison. She's been working for the nation for some years, and she'll share that information with you. So I'm very again I'm very excited about this interview, and more excited about sharing the information with you because of the port of entry. The focus today will be on the port of entry, going and coming, and so some of there, and because like I mentioned, certainly times have changed as far as going back and forth into the United States, going into Mexico and coming back. So certainly that has, I think, becomes more stringent. So, but we do have a great working relationship with Border Patrol or Homeland Security, and one of those people here is here today to share the information. So I'm going to go ahead and let Bunny kind of introduce yourself.
Sure.
And share a little background.
Yeah, I've been your tribal liaison since 2009. And 2009, Janet Napolitano was the Secretary of Homeland Security, and she had some very special ties to the state of Arizona as our governor. And her connections with the Native Americans within this state were very prevalent. And so what would happen back then was, if there was a concern, it would go straight to Ms. Napolitano, and it would bypass the Commissioner's Office for Customs and Border Protection, and then the conversation would come downhill. So I was actually in Washington, D.C. at the time when I became the tribal liaison. working on H1N1. And I got a phone call from one of the assistant directors here. Bonnie, we're going to be tribal liaison. Well, what does that do? We don't know yet, but you're going to be it. Okay. Poof. Tribal liaison. And I think a lot of it has to do because of my background. I grew up on the Navajo Nation, so I have maybe a little bit better cultural sensitivities than most when it comes to Native American issues and maybe how those things are addressed. So I've really built this program and the relationships from the ground up, and I'm really honored to be here today to share these conversations, because I think that cultural traditions in Native American tribal relations, if you will, across the country are diminishing. And I think it's important to do whatever I can. When I left Navajo Nation, looking in the rearview mirror, I said I want to give back. So I think it's important as part of what I do to ensure that my word's solid, right, and that I'm trying to promote Native American culture and how those things move forward in today's society. When you look at, like you mentioned earlier, the issues with 9/11 and border security as a whole. So I see this pilgrimage as being very important, obviously to your nation and to those persons being able to experience this, because it's all part of that, right? I think starting talking about documentation is very important. Tohono Nation has a tribal identification, which can be used to present when you come back into the United States. That has not changed at this point in time. There is an enhanced tribal card that I think would be beneficial to the Tohono Nation at some point as we move forward with this. But right now it's important to know that the tribal ID, you can still present that when you're coming across. Maybe you present it with your driver's license so that the officer doesn't have to type in the person's information from the tribal ID, because the Arizona driver's license has a machine-readable zone on it, and you can utilize the machine-readable zone to put that into the computer a lot quicker. So that might be some way to make the crossing maybe a little less strenuous as far as time is concerned. Something else that's also out there right now, state of Arizona has a travel document. I think it's $17 that you can go and apply at the motor vehicle division, and it has the radio frequency identification antenna.
What's it called?
It's a travel document for the state of Arizona. I'm not quite sure exactly what they call it, but it is part of the Real ID. It's recognized under Real ID, so you can use it to travel land borders and open loop cruises and things like that, or closed loop cruises, I'm sorry. I think that might be something to look into if somebody already has an Arizona driver's license and you're a U.S. citizen, that would be something that you would look into.
Well, let's go back, Bonnie. You mentioned culture sensitivity, which I truly agree. I think there should be, with your background working for Navajo, and it's great that the nation has that kind of relationship with particularly with those agents that are liaison that do have some background. I think that really enhances the relationship between Customs and Border Protection and the Alton people in regards to that they understand the sensitivity of culture, but also tradition. You know, and so, and let's back up a little. And if I was on the pilgrimage and came to the border, there's no, I can cross the border without question going into Mexico, right?
Right.
Okay. All right.
You might get questions. We do have outbound operations. You might, because that's part of what we do on occasion. We have pulse and surge outbound operations. So, you know, an officer might come up and talk to you if you're in your vehicle, if you're walking, and ask for your purpose of travel into Mexico. Okay. And that would be, you know, looking for weapons, ammunition, bulk money crossing into Mexico. Those are the concerns that we would be looking at when you're going south into Mexico, obviously.
Okay, so it's safe to say that you could be questioned if you're walking with this particular outbound.
It's possible, or not. I mean, if we're not doing it, then It doesn't happen.
Well, I guess that makes sense as far as what you mentioned, as far as weapons or anything going into Mexico.
And it's just important to know that, at a port of entry, we facilitate in and out, right? It's not just a one-way street. And so because of drug trafficking organizations and all of those things going on, we're going to run outbound operations on occasion, and we're going to try, to catch that illicit currency going south, or those ammunition and firearms going south.
Okay. I know this is probably a loaded question before I go into the other questions. So how can we define a port of entry?
Okay.
I mean, I know it's in a broader sense as far as not just tribal members, but also numbers. But if you can just break it down, that always.
I think it's actually not too complicated when you look at what a port of entry really does, and what the purpose of what we're there for. We're there to facilitate trade and travel, right, in and out. So if we're looking at the facilitation of trade and travel going in and out, the port of entry is just basically the waypoint to make those things occur, whether it be tracking something coming in trade. Nogales has some of the highest produce imports in the country. When you look at that, and we also have like some of the highest narcotics interceptions in the country. We also process, just in the port of Nogales alone, roughly 17,000 people a day coming in. And if you look at what that does to trade and the economic boost that provides, if each one of those 17,000 people just bought a bottle of water,
right,
how much we're providing to the economy every day in just the facilitation of just that bottle of water. In addition to the enforcement that we also bring to the table, because obviously with the opioid epidemics and the methamphetamines and all of those really nasty, heavy narcotics that are out on the street, our job, number one, is to take out terrorism, and then number two is to try to interdict those narcotics before they hit the street.
Right. So there is some heavy emphasis as far as the port of entry, not just patrolling along the border with those countermeasures, but also I think it's good to understand, because probably some people are maybe not very knowledgeable I guess some would think, well, it's more of a headache, backed up cars and everything, but there is a purpose for a port of entry.
Yep.
As far as coming into the United States, that existed for years, but now it's more
much more prevalent.
Right. So as far as going in, there could be a question as far as pilgrimage.
It's something else that I want to say also, if there's feathers going south, I know a lot of times they carry staffs, or they have other types of regalia that might be something that Fish and Wildlife would be interested in. They should probably check that feather or that regalia item with the Department of Agriculture before they depart, rather than coming into the country with it and saying that they left with it, but there's no proof that it started here.
So what you're saying is there should be some tracking on if it is an eagle feather.
A regulated item, right? Because eagle feathers, only Native Americans, federally recognized members of a Native American tribe should be able to have or allowed to carry an eagle feather. And that's part of the Native American Religious Act and all that other stuff that came into play. But we still need to make sure that those members going south understand that we also have to enforce those laws, right? And so there's CITES with agriculture, and there's all these other things that the USDA, the Department of Agriculture, asks us to enforce, and Fish and Wildlife asks us to enforce. And so we need to make sure that the person who's carrying the eagle feather has a tribal ID with them, and that tribal member or that tribal ID is a part of the 577 recognized tribes.
Okay.
So it can't be a member from Mexico bringing that feather in, if you understand what I'm saying.
Right.
And that's just because of the way the regulations are set.
So it could work both ways, going in and coming back.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And so that kind of leads me to people coming back as far as ceremonial or even autumn medicine men or medicine lady, if you will. There was some question surrounding that as far as bringing those but certainly eagle feathers are probably more prominent as far as being used, but other things as far as ceremonial.
There's herbal teas, sure, right, and those, like you mentioned, other ceremonial things that might come through that I would recommend discussing that with the officer when you get to the entry, whether it be in a vehicle or it be coming through pedestrian, that you have that conversation with the officer. I have some religious items with me that are very sensitive. Can I meet with an agriculture inspector to make sure that these things are handled properly? And you as somebody who is the owner of that religious item can provide some parameters. I know sometimes there's some sensitivities where perhaps a female officer would be requested not to touch something, or vice versa. Please don't put it in the x-ray machine. We'd have to talk to you about that, because we also get narcotics in saints. This time of year is when they load saints full of cocaine and try to bring them in through the port of entry. So understanding that we also have threats that we have to address.
Yeah, and you mentioned religious statues, and that's probably I don't know if that was encountered from your experience from past pilgrimages when all of them come back.
They've been blessed,
and whether or not they will have some trouble there, but it's good to know that information, that because if they're not allowed, then it's but is there a way to detect that, whether or not they're...
Yeah, see, this saints can come through, right? Saints can come in, but the officer may request to see it and inspect it, right? Okay. To look at it and look at the bottom of it to see if there's been tampering, take a look at it and address it. Okay. And there's other ways to inspect it other than putting it through the big x-ray machine. We have some handheld detective things. We also have a canine that can come up and sniff it. And if the canine is, solid with no narcotics present, down the road, there's many different ways that we can try to address the concern. It's not just a one-way street.
Okay, so it'd be safe to say that any religious artifact, a particular statue, could be inspected, and it's not just because they're just doing it just to do it. It's sort of reasons.
There's a reason for it. Drug trafficking organizations are really, really smart. They look at any way that they can possibly take advantage of a good situation and make it work to their benefit. So in this particular instance, what comes across right now? Saints. Well, is the officer looking at the saints? Right? Maybe we can load it with some form of narcotics and send it through. Another one, I think it was in Laredo, where they actually made the saint out of cocaine. Yeah. Right? So these are things that you see. So we have to be cognizant of that and just understand that we know what the threats are, and we have to make sure that we're focusing on those to prevent drug trafficking organizations from bringing the narcotics into the country. I mean, whatever we can do, to prevent that. And so the officer may say, can I see it? Need to look at it. Or they may just say, thank you, have a nice day, and you go down the road. It's going to depend on how the officer determines it. When you're processing 17,000 people today and tomorrow and the next day and the day after that, you get pretty good at reading people. Right? So I might be talking to him and say, have a great day. Right? Or I might say, let's have a better combination conversation here and make sure that my gut feels pretty solid about what's coming in today.
Okay. So let's go back as far as taking eagle feathers or anything, or sage or whatever across the border. So sometimes it would be a good idea to ask the officer, would I have a problem bringing this back?
Yes.
So, would it be okay?
That's a great idea.
Rather than coming back and facing some
surprised. I understand, because of my background, that sometimes eagle feathers are passed down from generation to generation to generation. Right? I understand that. So losing my great-great-great-grandmother's or grandfather's eagle feather because I didn't stop and check might behoove you to do that, right? Vice Chair Verlin, Jose, and I've had some conversations over eagle feathers in the past, and so we're pretty versed on this. And usually we can get them returned, but it's a big hoopla because it's going through a completely different agency at this point.
Right.
Now it's Fish and Wildlife, right, with USDA that's deciding whether we can return this back to the tribe.
Right.
It's not us anymore.
Right, and there is probably a lot of history as far as eagle feathers and involving game and fish and things like that. You know,
Sure.
I mean, there's some, I guess, pros and cons about it, and it's debatable. And but certainly, I would want our nation's members to understand that as far as possibility of what could happen.
I would recommend to understand the reason why we're so really concerned. If you get on eBay and you look for an eagle feather fan, they're going for somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000 right now. One of those beautiful beaded, right? I think it's for Native American Church, the fans that they have.
Right.
$10,000 to $15,000, but they're not asking if you're Native American or not. So when you look at the exploitation of Native American culture and Native American art, we're trying to do the best we can with what we're given, right? And make sure that those exploitations are prevented if possible.
Okay. And there have been several questions as far as, okay, is my tribal ID still good for me to come across? Would you say it is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so would it be the current, because I myself have an old tribal ID, and would that be still good?
Yes, it should be fine.
Right.
Now, if it's legible, you know, can you read the name? Can you read the date of birth? What's on the card? I don't know what's legible on the card at this point when you look at that. An officer's going to ask you, of what country are you a citizen? So this is the next question, because I will get the conversation, Tohono Nation. Well, you and I both know that the Tohono Nation spans the border on both sides. So the next question is going to be, where were you born? And if you can put yourself in the United States, that's wonderful. That makes you a U.S. citizen. But if you were born in Mexico, we're going to have to do some digging. Doesn't necessarily not make you a U.S. citizen, but we just need to dig and find out what the parameters were of the birth and who your parents were.
So, so other than the tribal ID and also the what you mentioned,
Arizona travel card,
right? And what other?
There's
passport?
Passport card. Your Sentry card will get you in. If you have Sentry, you can come through the Sentry lane. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to say, by law, we cannot deny entry to a U.S. citizen. By law. So if you come with a birth certificate and a driver's license or a birth certificate and some other form of identification, you're going to end up in a secondary environment with the officer asking you some more questions. Why are you not presenting other documentation? But by law, we cannot deny entry to a U.S. citizen, and that's important to know. A lot of times during these pilgrimages, people's wallets get stolen, purses get stolen, identification gets lost. If a member can bring your birth certificate, or you should even show up at the port and you say you're a U.S. citizen, we do some digging and we believe your statement. You're coming in.
Now, can your system, if I happen to lose everything, I have no idea, and I came to the port of entry and say, well, you know, my wallet was stolen, had all my information, I don't have anything, I am a U.S. citizen. Can I just say, I have a Social Security?
Yeah, it's a little bit more
is
deep
that something
than that. What we probably will do is we'll ask you, have you ever crossed before? Right? Have you ever gotten a passport? Because then we can reach out to Department of State to see if your old passport is on file to verify your citizenship. So there's many different layers of how we would get to the bottom of that, and I tell members that at 2 o'clock in the morning when they call me, because a lot of them have my phone number, and I don't mind that. That's what my number's for. Right. To give them the assurance that they can come home, right? And they just come home and they're honest with the officer. I got mugged, crashed out, somebody stole my wallet. I lost my wallet during the walk, I lost my ID. Just talk to the officer. I'm a U.S. citizen. I was born wherever I was born in the United States. And we'll have those conversations. And again, like I said, we process so many people. It could very well be that the officer believes your statement from the beginning, and you don't end up in secondary, you go down the road. It all depends on totality of circumstances and what's being said and what's being presented at the time. Honestly, a lot of times people who arrive to the port who don't have a valid document usually have a warrant. Gonna be honest with you, they're trying to hide who they are. So that's why a lot of times people end up in secondary, because we want to make sure that, you know, the person coming in is the person that's coming in, and that this person doesn't have a warrant.
If I came without losing my documents, I would certainly end up in secondary, which would take
High probability. 5 minutes to maybe 2 hours, depending on how busy it is. I mean, we have a lot going on at the ports of entry right now, especially in Nogales, with the migrant surge coming in from Guatemala and Honduras and all those areas. We have a lot going on. And when the port is averaging 5 narcotic seizures a day, of the narcotics that we're taking off the street, it could be a 5-minute wait, and it could be longer depending on what's going on at the port at the time.
What's the fastest way I can come back? I mean, what document gives me the quickest exit?
So the fastest way for you to come back is with a passport card.
Passport card.
And you get into the ready lane, and you come through the ready lane with your passport card, because it has the RFID technology.
So what is ready lane mean?
Ready lane means that you have a document with RFID technology with the antenna, and it pings to a paddle. You'll see like these white boxes, and you show the document to the paddle, and the paddle brings up all your information automatically in the computer inside. And so it makes the processing a lot quicker. Other than the Sentry lane, which is the fastest way to come in, RFID Ready lane is your second option. If you're going to be walking across, if you have a passport card, make sure you have your documents ready, and you can put it through the machine. There's a system there that you can put your document in before you get into the pedestrian line, and that'll process you a lot quicker. So just make sure you have your documents ready. If you have an Arizona travel card, that will help you. That's an RFID Ready lane document. So if you had an enhanced tribal card, if you're coming with another member, Pasquayaki has the enhanced tribal card, that puts you in the Ready lane for the same reason, because of the RFID. Right.
So I guess safe to say that I know Pasquayaki has their enhancement. And I believe the nation is looking at that as far as and will be good for the ready lane. And so any document that can be used as far as technology
that has an antenna, it has the RFID antenna inside, and the antenna is not something that broadcasts all of your information. All it is like a mailbox. So if the antenna number is 456, when that paddle picks up 456 and the card identification, and it's going to go to that 456 mailbox. It's going to pull out that 456 information. It's going to pop up on the computer screen. So when you look at that, that's just what makes it so much quicker, right? Because officers wear gloves all the time. Now you're fat fingering the information, right? Because the information is not auto-populating. So it takes time, right? That's where the time comes in.
So what puts me in the slower lane?
Presenting a birth certificate or no identification. Presenting a document that can't be read. Like, so if it doesn't have a machine readable zone on the back of the card where it can be swiped, anything that has to be typed in is going to make it a very long trip. And then when you show up at the port with 6 people in the car, and here's all my birth certificates, and by law we have to put everybody in, it can take a while.
So if you have 6 people and everybody has this RF antenna and only one person doesn't have it, it could delay the whole thing.
A little bit, yeah, right. The one person's going to have to get fat fingered in, right? They're going to have to get typed in with the gloves, but the other 5, that's 5 people that we didn't have to fat finger. That's seconds as compared to, what, a minute and a half to fat finger.
Right, and I'm just trying to have our Autumn understand the actual process, understanding of what RF antenna, having that availability as far as technology, getting through the port of entry and easily, but also what could be asked of you if you bring any kind of ceremony or anything. Well, let's go to food. Okay, sometimes, Autumn, as you know,
sure,
we'll bring cheese.
Yep.
Or other.
Right, and it's going to depend on the day and on the threat. So we went, good example. I used to work at the Port of Nogales. One day eggs were admissible. The next day they were not, because H1N1 took off, right? And the chicken avian influenza. Next thing you know, no chicken and no eggs. Right? But that was like from one day to the next. So I would recommend that if you want to know what to bring in, you go to cbp.gov, and there's a site that you can go in and you can actually see. It's called Get You Home, and you can look at that and it'll give you lists of what's currently not allowed to come into the United States. But I can tell you pork products are a no-no. Chicken products are a no-no. Fruit, don't bring it in, and particularly anything that has a citrus skin, so no limes, no lemons, no oranges, no grapefruits. And avocados can come in, but they can't have the pit. So nothing propagatable, which means you can't, if you can grow it, it can't come in.
Okay.
So, and then when you're out there, and this would happen to me. I would be out walking around saying, oh, what a nice plant. And I cut or pick it up out of the dirt and put it in a plastic bag and I'm bringing it home. Can't do that, because Mexican dirt from Mexico is different than the dirt here in the United States. It contains different threats, so different types of bugs. In the United States, a lot of times it's a chain of bugs. Bigger bugs eat the smaller bugs all the way down, right? Well, if we bring in a particular type of bug that maybe doesn't have something that can take it out, now next thing you know, all of your dirt is infected all the way around it, because you brought in this plant that you thought was really pretty, right? And now you can't grow anything else because it has taken out all the other bugs that help to propagate plants. So it's important, when you think about the fruit fly and other things that come across, those are just the tip of the iceberg in the bug threat department. They're in wood, they're in leaves, they're in the teas that you bring back, the herbal teas, which is why agriculture is so very big on checking what you bring in. It's important to declare what you got. If you tell the officer, yeah, I brought back some cheese and some tortillas, you need to explain who the cheese and the tortillas are for, right? And a lot of times you have a big family, so you bring back 30 pounds of cheese. Well, if the officer only has one person in his family, he's like, that's a lot of personal cheese, right? Are you coming in to sell it? Because that's a no-no. If you're going to come in and sell the cheese, you have to go through the trade department, right? Right. So you have to explain where the cheese is going, where the tortillas are going. I always tell people, I'm bringing it in for my family. If that's what you're doing, then just explain it. Don't get nervous. Just explain to the officer, yeah, I brought back some cheese, because it's really hard to get good cheese in the United States. It really is. I love Magdalena cheese, I'm going to be honest. It's yummy. So you just kind of have to know those things. But I think it's, talk to the officer and just let them know, this is what I've got, or let her know this is what I have. Because agriculture may need to look at it. Right, and make sure that there's nothing in there that's going to cause damage to your nation. If you have members that live out here and they plant something in the ground and suddenly now you can't grow anything, well, your agriculture department just took a really big hit, right?
Why?
So, when you look at that piece of it, we're just trying to help you get home safe and basically protect the dirt.
Right, that's understandable. And I do understand as far as bugs that feed off other bugs to protect the plants. Yep. And when you mentioned wood, that kind of brought to mind as far as the staff that Autumn carried. It's mesquite. Yeah. So I'm sure they bring it back. We have no problems in that area.
Yeah, usually if the wood is not propagatable, it's been stripped, it's not something you're going to put in the ground, And that's why I always say check in with agriculture before you leave, make sure that this wood can come back in. And that's what I would recommend. There's certain types of things, sugarcane can't come in, bamboo can't come back at all, period. So no bringing back the sugarcane from your tia's house in Magdalena, no caña coming back. Those things, right? You just have to know that, because that's all propagatable, no matter how small the piece, it's propagatable.
And liquor.
Yeah, so we enforce Arizona's law.
Okay.
So it's 21 and over, and 1 liter of alcohol per adult. So I would just recommend, checking in with the officer, say I've got some alcohol, and they'll take a look at it. Make sure you always declare it. And the officer will say, yeah, this is reasonable, you'll be down the road. So 3 adults, 3 bottles, 3 liters. So when you get up to the window, or you're walking up to the port, you're in your car or whatever, officer says to you, hey, good morning, where are you coming from? And they ask you, what your citizenship is and all those other things, and they say, do you have anything to declare today? Fruits, vegetables, any alcohol, liquor, what do you got going on? At that point, you would say to the officer, I've got a couple bottles of liquor that I picked up here in Nogales, and I've got an ice chest, but it's just cheese. So the officer may say to you, well, let's just make it quick. Can you open up your trunk? Right? So he pops the trunk, he looks in the ice chest, he comes around, he gives you your documents and says, have a great day. It might be that.
And that's still the process as far as express lanes.
Mm-hmm. Yes, even if you're in the ready lane.
Or the ready lane.
Yeah. So even if you're in the ready lane, or even sentry, you're still subject to inspection. And then it's important to understand at a port of entry, it's not just what happens when you stop at the booth. Anybody who's traveled to Mexico and come back, we have what's called layered enforcement. So we have canines, and they're usually standing right as you get right out of the primary booths and you're coming through. Now we have the canines, and we're checking, we're running cars, as we call it. Then we have this thing that looks like a huge cookie maker, and it's the Z portal. And you might end up in a Z portal and driving through the Z portal, where we're going to look for narcotics in the doors of the cars. And then you're going to come through and you're going to see 2 more officers at the end at the exit booth, and they're going to do their final, yeah, have a nice day. So it's layered enforcement all the way through. And a lot of times we're very successful on the layered enforcement, where it might have come through the primary booth where the officer's in a quick hurry trying to get people down the road, and they might have missed something. So it's that second, third, and fourth set of eyes where we're gonna take down the narcotics and get rid of the illicit drugs as much as we can.
Well, I think it's good to understand, as far as our ALTA members that are coming across the border. I'm sure some of those that have been doing this for decades, I'm sure have gotten used to, but it's good to keep up with information.
Yes.
That, changes, like you said, changes every day in regards to the aches.
Yep. Yep.
And or even other diseases.
Yeah, it depends. We had hoof and mouth disease for a little while, where cow and beef products couldn't come in for a while, and then it just ended. No more threat. We're done. So the next day you could bring in, cow products, but for this amount of time, not so much. So it's gonna change. It is gonna vary. And something I would always express, and I've said this for almost 10 years now, if there's an officer that is rude, or you don't feel that you were treated properly, or there was something just didn't make sense to you, I would always ask that you stop and ask for a supervisor right then. It's a 24-hour operation. We have people that are coming in that work for us from all over the country. They're called TDY officers, because our staffing is so short right now at the ports of entry. Right. We're roughly, I would say we're probably at about 27% attrition rate right now, which means we're missing well over 100 officers at the Port of Nogales, if not more. So those officers are ever changing. So if you wait to see me in 2 months and tell me, Bonnie, this happened at the port 2 months ago, and you don't know the time and you don't know the officer's name, I'm in a world of hurt to try to get to the bottom of what happened. I would much rather prefer that you stop immediately and talk to a supervisor and say, this didn't work. Or, maybe you call me. That's happened. You call me and say, Bonnie, this just happened to me. I came through this lane. it was this officer, and this is what was said, and I didn't understand how that happened. Can you explain it to me? Okay, then you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna get on the phone. And I'm gonna call down to the port of entry, and I'm gonna request a small investigation, look into it to find out, and I may or may not call you back. Because sometimes for privacy reasons I can't address what occurred, but I'm gonna look into it. Mm-hmm. And that's important for, I think, the members to know that the port takes it seriously. They are really, really serious about professionalism. I am really, really serious about the service that I provide to the nation. So it's important that you get the messages to me or to that supervisor immediately so that we can take a look at that. And again, maybe it was a misunderstanding. Officers are working 16-hour shifts. They're exhausted.
Right.
You know, and so you come in at hour 15:30, right? He may not be as warm and fuzzy as he was as hour 1.5. You know, just because they get exhausted. So I'm not asking for a reprieve on everything, but for sure go and talk to a supervisor. I would ask that. Okay.
Well, that's good information to have as far as that. So I was going to ask you about that as sometimes there is conflicts at the border, and certainly we believe in the past Border Patrol has been open to, okay, let us know what happened that day.
Yep.
Not 2 weeks down,
yeah,
a month later.
So. Yeah, I would definitely ask that, just because it's easier to get to the bottom of. You know, Nogales has over 400 officers.
Right.
And they're all shifting. We have Morley Gate, DeConcini entry, Mariposa entry. We have the cargo area. We have the airport, and these guys are moving. So where he started today, he may not even, or she may not even be there. She might be at Morley tomorrow or Mariposa tomorrow, depending on what the need is for the staffing. So it's not like they're always going to be in the same place.
Okay. So now, I'm not sure, but Rocky Point may be another exit. Is that is that a smaller port of entry?
That's Lukeville, right? That's really? Lukeville port of entry. They're not a 24-hour port. Grand Avenue is a 24-hour port. The rest of them are not 24-hour ports. So Mariposa closes at 10. So it's important to know that's the port on the hill in Nogales. Sasabe closes, I think, at 6 o'clock now. They changed their hours. So I think they're 6 to 6 or something like that. 10 hours, maybe. Yeah, I think it's 6 to 6. And so you have to know the port hours. Again, cbp.gov will tell you what's going on. I'm not expecting any other closures or changing in hours. Lukeville is a 6 to midnight. The port director's usually there. I would definitely stop there and ask for the port director if there's an issue. Don't not. First of all, Lukeville's really far, right? Right. And so getting out there to get to the bottom of it, it should happen sooner than later, in my opinion, just to make sure. Right.
So I guess it's wise to look up the times
yes.
Of closures at those ports.
cbp.gov, and you can go to the ports of entry, and it'll tell you. There's also a wait time application on cbp.gov, so you can find out what the wait times are, where's the fastest crossing, right? That's all helpful. So if you look and you're like, man, DeConcini's a 2-hour wait, which is really rare, but it's possible. And Mariposa, which is taking a left and coming up over the hill, is a 45-minute wait. I think I'll go to Mariposa, right? So it's important to know that. And if you might look and say, well, I'm going to go visit family out in Sonoyta, I'm going to go to Lukeville, and Lukeville has rarely a wait time during the week. Maybe that's your best bang for the buck. So it's important to look at that. And Sasabe, same way, they usually don't have much of a wait.
I know that sometimes we do get or information is sent out as far as citizens of the United States going into Mexico, as far as any possible
travel advisories.
Right.
So if you go to Department of State and you go to, it's DOS//travel. And you're going to see every single country listed, and you're going to see Mexico. You're going to click on Mexico, and you're going to see the state of Sonora, and it'll tell you all the travel advisories and what you need to know for this location right now.
Okay.
So the Department of State.
Is that updated?
I'm not going to speak for the Department of State and say that it's daily, but I sure hope it is.
Okay.
I know that it's updated regularly, and they actually send out, if you Google Department of State advisories for Mexico, you're going to see a whole bunch of things that have come up in the last 6 months regarding Sonora. And I think one just came out for Rocky Point area, as a matter of fact.
Okay, yeah. Well, yeah, and that'll be good information to have, and certainly we'll have that information on our show for our Alton viewers to look up.
Yeah, I think it's good to know, there's a lot on Google. Google is my friend, I'm just saying.
He's everybody's friend.
Right, there's a lot on there. When you look at the travel advisories and what's available, I would also recommend knowing where the consulates are. That's important. Know that there's a consulate in Nogales, Sonora for the United States, and know what those hours are for that consulate. And the consulate can help you if there's issues, God forbid that it should happen, you end up in jail or something happens, that the American consulate can come and help you, at least get information to your family and do all of those things for you. So that's important to know.
Right, and I think I haven't heard if there was any problems as far as being arrested or anything like that. But it's good information to know that. I know first thing I probably do is try to call somebody down here, to help.
Sure.
But there is also the American consulate you mentioned in regards to helping.
If you have a car accident, guess what? If you can't pay for the car accident and you don't have Mexican car insurance, you could end up in jail.
Well, I guess that's good information to have, that those that are traveling to Mexico should.
They need to know that, because if you have a car accident, we get these issues quite frequently at the port where somebody had to spend some time in jail because they had a car accident and couldn't pay. And it doesn't matter who was the causer of the accident, right? So it's important to know those things, that the laws are very different in Mexico, and you need to be ready for that. So I would recommend, what is it, that Sanborn or whatever car, Mexican car insurance or whatever. Make sure you have something, because you don't want to end up in jail because nobody told you.
Right, I never thought about that as far as,
It's just something chatting here with you, I'm like, yeah, I probably should bring that up.
Well, it's good to know, because a lot of our members do travel down to Magdalena, not just doing Francis Day, but even doing off religious holidays.
Yeah, so it's good to know, make sure you know the rules of the road over there, right, and what the requirements are. If you can reach out to the Mexican consulate in Nogales, Arizona, they can give you some pointers, some information on what to look out for and things to be aware of when you're traveling in Mexico. I think that's good information to have, right? So that your members are informed.
Right. Yeah. I guess even though it's from Tucson, it's 120 miles away as far as Magdalena, but certainly. A thought comes to mind as far as any laws changes in Mexico. Do we get any kind of information from Mexico if there's any laws that are changing?
I haven't seen anything, which is why I recommend the consulate. I do know that for a while they were not recognizing tribal identification, that they were only recognizing state IDs and passports. They've kind of become a little bit more lenient past kilometer 21, I think is what it is. But you have to check with the Mexican consulate and make sure that none of that's changed, because it can change overnight. And if you're not aware, I can think of one particular instance where they changed their agriculture requirements overnight. And then people were coming from the nation actually to go drop off food somewhere in Mexico out of Sonoita, and they weren't allowed in with certain fruits, so they had to bring it back, and they dropped it off at the port of entry. So this big table of fruits and vegetables that couldn't be brought in, and it just happened like that overnight. So I think it's important to know what Mexico's doing, right, and to check with the Mexican consulate. And I think they have a website again, Google, and see if there's some information on things to look out for and to be aware of, the current changes and regulations. I think that's always a good, safe thing. Understanding that Mexico is a completely different country, completely different laws, completely different everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it might be our neighbor, but the rules are different.
Does the consulate help in regards to if there's a, you know, you're crossing the border along the way in Mexico, somebody gets ill?
The American consulate?
Right.
If it's a hospital or something like that, they do get involved. They do work on those things. So there's a lot of assistance. I would definitely take a look and see what the American consulate's able to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in Mexico, I do know that they help with people that end up in jail. They help with people that are destitute or end up in not necessarily good situations in foreign countries. So I would imagine sickness would be something that would be of consideration. You know, at least they could help to notify family members or whatever. I think that's something to look into. Sure.
Is there anything else you want to say as far as?
I think I'd like to think that I provided some really solid information.
Okay.
I've been doing this a long time. Please make sure you look at the website and know what you can't bring. You can't bring back live chickens. You can't bring back turtles. No fish. No aviary type birds. Then there'll be people that try to sell them to you on the side of the road,
Yeah.
right? Here's this pretty finch. Nope, can't come in. So don't bring back live birds. You know, these are all things just to be on the lookout, because they will sell them to you and say, sure, it can come in. So next thing you know, you're giving up your friend's finch at the border because they can't come in. It's important to know those things.
Yeah, there goes $20 or something.
Right, whatever they got you for at the time.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty much it. Go to our website, cbp.gov, take a look at it. There's a huge amount of information in there, a lot of what's going on down at the border. The border wait time application is there. You can get all of that information. So yeah, I think that gets you home. You know, I think it's called getyouhome.gov on that app, and you can get in there and take a look at it. It gives you the documents, all kinds of stuff.
Okay, so if I'm going in, and if I may be stopped by that outbound program, but most of the time maybe not.
Right.
But it'd be good if I'm carrying eagle feathers, or if there's any question in my mind that I'll have a problem bringing this ceremonial artifact back, or anything I'm carrying into Mexico. If there's any doubt in my mind, can I talk to somebody
Yeah,
there?
stop and ask for an agriculture specialist.
Okay.
And get their first and final opinion on going south and coming back in with it.
Okay. Then coming back to the as far as the quickest ways to red lane and having the RF type passport, probably number one. Your tribal ID, of course, as you heard on Autumn, members and those who will be doing the pilgrimage, that if you have your tribal ID, that is good. And that is that for the red lane too, or is that?
No, not
that's
yet.
To the
Not until it becomes an enhanced tribal card,
Okay.
and then it'll be ready lane.
only Pascoyaki has.
Well, actually, there's I think 10 tribes now on the line that have gotten their enhanced tribal card. So it's growing, and
Yeah.
I think we've got some other memorandums
Yeah.
out there.
And I believe the nation does try to get tribal members to get their passports, which is good. So also Century, of course, the passport, tribal ID, the travel document, Arizona travel document
Yep.
that you mentioned. Coming back, you mentioned some of the things of reporting coming through the red lane. They have some
Declare
cheese.
everything, yeah. Declare
I don't
everything
have
in
a
the
ton
car.
of cheese, but
Right. Some for my family, you know. Yeah, declare
Right.
it.
Right.
Those are
Yeah.
important.
Right, and but also some of your statues that may be inspected,
Yep.
not just because of being mean or anything like that, but because of that it can be used as a source for narcotics,
Yep.
things of that nature.
Correct.
But if there is a conflict, be sure to talk to if there's a doubt and there's, well, and I do officers have a bad day, a long day,
Sure.
working long hours, and
Yep. Ask for a supervisor.
I know some members and probably some other non-members too have an attitude, and
Everybody's tired, right? I mean,
Yeah.
this is a pilgrimage. People have been walking. You're exhausted, sleeping on the side of the road, combined with an officer who's been working 15 and a half hours.
Right.
Sometimes personalities clash at that point because we're all just exhausted, right?
Yeah, but it'd be good to know if there is an issue that they can either call you or talk to the
ask the
supervisor at the port of entry.
Correct.
But don't take a month
No.
or a couple weeks. Be sure you report that right away.
Yep.
As far as liquor, if you're bringing liquor across, you do have to be 21 years of age, and 1 liter
Yep. Per adult.
per adult. So you can't, if you have.
Yeah. No bringing back a case of Bacardi. Just can't do it unless there's 12 people in the car.
So if I transport domestic beer into Mexico and bring it back, is that the same thing?
Usually, yes.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, you'd have to declare it because now you're bringing it back.
Okay.
So even if it's domestic, even domestic fruits and vegetables, it's all part of the declaration process. I would recommend leaving anything that you've purchased in the United States that has to do with fruits and vegetables, just leave it in Mexico, because it's not going to be able to come back in even if you declare it.
Water is no problem.
No, not a problem. Like I mentioned, go to that website. If there's something that we have missed in this informative conversation, I think that website would pretty much tie it up.
I guess what I like for all the members is to know, because you've worked with the nation for some years and they've had the experience of dealing with some of the issues that have come across your table or your desk, and some of the do's and don'ts, and so it's just by experience that you're sharing this information, but also what you as a supervisor at a port of entry,
These are all things I've seen.
But I think we have to do realize that at this day and age, after 9/11, that the high insecurity along the border.
It's very important.
And so we have to understand that. We may not like it, we may not understand it, but I think it's good. And I think there's, as far as, like you said, from the beginning, as far as culture sensitivity, and which you do have, in regards to understanding, but also you have to enforce the law that is laws of the United States.
We try to make it as painless as possible, right? We do try, but we have to enforce the laws. There's 77 pages of laws that we have to enforce on any given day. It's not just one page, it's 77 pages of rules and regulations that we're trying to solve in 45 seconds per car.
Right. And I think it's good for us to understand that, as far as all of them, and why these things are in place and why these things are enforced. And I know we have probably our differences on occasion, but for me, I think it's good to get the facts.
But I think the more educated we all are, the better we all are, right? The more I understand the cultures and the sensitivities here, the more you understand my culture, I mean really that's what it is, in law enforcement, the better our relationship can be, right? The more open, the more candid we can become, and be honest about things, and have that comfort in knowing.
Okay, so what we're going to do, and for our members, we're going to go ahead and Bonnie's going to provide the information, that some of the things that she shared, and we'll put them on our segment for you to go, such as you mentioned some of the Google items that you can go onto as far as advisory, watch what's happening in Mexico, and certainly there are certain things that are particularly with cartel activity happening in Sonora, and so certainly we want to be very conscientious about our members in Mexico and having a safe St. Francis Day. Yeah,
that's all we can ask for. I want everybody to come back in one piece, right? And come back spiritually sound, right? And
Well, that's
all
yeah.
those
Well,
things,
yeah, well,
right?
you put it.
And I just hope that we can be part of that positivity as we move forward, right?
Yeah, and that's I believe that's the journey here, is to get that spiritual
Right.
meaning.
Sure.
And coming back, but at the same time, we need to understand that we're into another country.
Yep.
Mexico is another country.
Yes, it is.
And coming back, we'll have to follow the law as far as
Right.
coming back to the United States.
Yeah, if you're forward and everything, there shouldn't be any issue. The officer is going to say, "Welcome home."
Right. Yeah. It's. I think it's great. Well, Bonnie, I certainly want to thank you for coming onto my show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I think it's great. What a great opportunity.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
I certainly want to thank your bosses.
Right. Saying, "Go ahead, Bonnie, just go do it." Okay.
Yeah, and our goal here, Tohono is to, get information to you, as you heard from Bonnie, as far as the do's and don'ts of coming back and what you should have or don't have as far as entry into the United States. So that's the goal here. Hopefully, that you've gotten some information that Bonnie has shared in regards to your travels or your pilgrimage to Marina. And so I know that she has come before for council to share some of the information. I think she is coming for council again, but we wanted to put a voice, a face to the voice, and so now you know how she looks.
Me.
So when you hear her voice, you've been hearing her voice over the past how long? 10 years?
Almost 10 years, yeah.
Yeah, on the
Almost 10
radio.
years.
So this is Bonnie. Very good person, very open. Like she said, I think she has that good relationship with our nation, tribal members, so she clearly understands our culture.
We give it a shot. We try real hard.
Yeah, and so
Real hard.
that's not to say it's it's perfect marriage.
No.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
going to be issues, but I think that's, for me, the best part of the relationship, that now we can bring things forward and that I'm going to do what I need to do, and I'll be able to provide what I can back to you. I think that, like you said, sometimes it's not necessarily warm and fuzzy. But like you said, it's not a perfect marriage. But I don't think any marriage is perfect. I've been doing mine for 25 years, and we have our moments. But it's about communication, right? And the relationship that we build together, and the trust that you have.
Well, it'd be sad to lose you once you retire.
Right? Yes, I have 9.5 years to retire.
Well, enjoy it.
You get a little bit. You get a little more.
Yeah, that's good to know. But again, Tohono members and those who are doing program, we're certainly glad you joined us today, and we certainly thank Bonnie, and we certainly thank U.S. Customs and Border Protection. And for allowing him to join us, and so certainly we want to wish you a safe travel, a safe pilgrimage, but also to understand the laws that do apply at the port of entry. That was our main goal, is to invite Bonnie to our show to give you that information, share that information with you. Hopefully you got some information too. But so if they have any questions, are they free to call you? Or
I'll put it out there.
Sure. We'll go ahead and put that on our segment as far as contact information for Bonnie if you have any further questions. But again, I think she'll be on the radio on a couple of next week, I think. So
I put my cell phone number out all the time. My office number rolls to my cell phone 24 hours a day.
Okay.
My email is always on. So I try very hard to, do what I can 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks again, Bunny.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And you have a great day.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Okay, Tohono, that's the end of our show with Bonnie here. And so hopefully you'll tune into our segments. Once it's on air, we'll certainly let you know. And we'll certainly get that information on the segment for you. And her contact information. Thank you, and you all have a nice day.